Now, for more on this story, we are now joined by our correspondent in the US, Steve Mort. Steve, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Now, how significant is this move by Trump to fire Lewandowski?
Well, it's very significant. Corey Lewandowski, of course, has been with the Donald Trump campaign since the very beginning. And of course, his mantra has always been, let Trump be Trump. But, you know, things started to turn a little bit sour for Corey Lewandowski when he was alleged to have assaulted a reporter at a Donald Trump rally in Palm Beach. This was after Super Tuesday, as Donald Trump was preparing for the Florida primary. Of course, Corey Lewandowski has been a polarizing figure himself, and the Donald Trump campaign clearly taking the decision that, as his campaign seems to be at the moment on track, that Corey Lewandowski should be the fall guy. As you said, he was an activist for the Americans for Prosperity in New Hampshire. He was a fairly seasoned political operative, but the Donald Trump campaign has been in real trouble, particularly since the shooting here in Orlando just about a week ago. Donald Trump's response to that has certainly elicited a lot of criticism from Republicans. Also, his decision to take on a judge in a very public way, the judge that is hearing his case against Trump University in San Diego, accusing him of being biased because of his Mexican heritage. That certainly rattled a lot of Republicans. We've seen many Republicans, particularly lawmakers on Capitol Hill, trying to distance themselves from Donald Trump and in fact even go as far as to unendorse him. But many are saying that they will still support his bid for the White House, even though they don't agree with a lot of his positions, saying that in fact he probably is better than Hillary Clinton. But definitely big changes afoot in the Trump campaign as they say goodbye to Corey Lewandowski.
Now, Steve, Lewandowski has reportedly been in a power struggle with more traditional Republicans. You've just mentioned the Republican strategists whom Trump hired more recently to try and reshape his campaign operation. Who is the strategist who was hired? We don't seem to know much about them. And, what does this mean for Trump going forward?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Donald Trump is basically trying to hire low-profile strategists, and that's part of the appeal. Maybe they themselves won't be quite as polarizing. You know, it took the U.S. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan, a very long time to endorse Donald Trump. He was very uncomfortable with the positions that he took during the primary campaign against more moderate candidates, for example, Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. And, what we're seeing now is an attempt to reset the campaign. Donald Trump's positions on things like immigration and his sort of doubling down on issues such as banning Muslims from immigrating to the United States until we can, in Trump's words, figure out what the hell is going on, is something that really didn't resonate across any of the political spectrum. He's not only been hit by Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side, but he's also been criticized from many more moderate Republicans. And it's not just moderate Republicans we've been seeing criticize Donald Trump. Throughout the week on Capitol Hill, we've seen many congressmen and senators sort of ducking into elevators, trying to avoid those reporters' questions. And I think part of the problem is that if the Donald Trump campaign, which is very light on campaign infrastructure, they only have one communications person, and that is a very young operative called Hope Hicks. If they hope to win this election, they're going to need the support of the GOP, of the Republican Party. And in order to make that happen, they're going to need the help of more seasoned strategists, those that have been involved in national campaigns before, those that were behind the Mitt Romney campaign. Forth. And in order to get that, then they needed to get rid of Corey Lewandowski in order that other operatives, more seasoned, more moderate operatives, could come in and work on the campaign.
Now, Steve, you mentioned earlier the fact that the more traditionalist Republicans are saying, yes, we will be behind you. You're better than Clinton. Now, looking at the sponsors who've already pulled out of the convention that's coming up, what does this mean for Trump? Does he have to pump in his own money, or are there more sponsors lined up who are willing to back him?
Well, it's likely that there will be sponsors that come in and pick up some of the slack. But, Donald Trump himself has basically said that if the Republican Party can't get behind him, then he'll go it alone. Now, what that means, whether or not it means he'll run as an independent or whether or not he'll run his campaign as a Republican alone, well, that remains to be seen. But we did, of course, see JP Morgan Chase decide that it was going to pull sponsorship from the Republican National Convention, which is a very expensive thing to put on, when you have thousands of people descending into one place. Donald Trump, of course, has based his campaign on free publicity. Simply by sitting on Twitter and writing a lot of comments, he's been able to garner what's been estimated to be about $1 billion of free media publicity. So as of yet, he hasn't outlaid much of his own money. Now, of course, the campaign, whoever is successful in the primaries, essentially runs the Republican convention. That's the way it's traditionally happened. His staff essentially set the agenda. They work with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, ostensibly, to put together the convention. Whether or not he's going to be able to put his own money in, well, that remains to be seen. And of course, there are a lot of rules. There are federal election rules, what the Donald Trump campaign or what Donald Trump's personal wealth can and cannot fund, and where that can come from. So all of those are things that are going to have to be ironed out. But, Donald Trump has kind of weathered this before. We've seen many of his financial backers, many of his customers, many of his sponsors of the Trump organization pull out, disassociate themselves with him over the time that he's been running for president, including the primaries. So this is nothing new in that respect. But certainly when money starts to come out of the convention, well, it'll be very difficult for it to be the sort of glitzy and glamorous affair that it might otherwise have been. But we'll certainly see if they're able to make up the monetary shortfall.
Now, Steve, are we likely to see Donald Trump sort of pulling away from social media, especially Twitter, where he has been, putting his mind out there and telling people what he exactly feels? Are we likely to see the new strategists sort of telling him to pull back and let them do their work?
Well, that's a really good question, and Twitter has been the sort of the hallmark of the Donald Trump campaign so far. It's where he's done all his battles. It's the turf that he feels comfortable on, those sort of late night Twitter rants where he posts things that he feels like posting. Now, Corey Lewandowski, as I mentioned before, his sort of catchphrase, if you like, was "let Trump be Trump," and that is certainly Donald Trump. However, he's basically ignited a lot of controversy using Twitter. He's tweeted out things that have been factually inaccurate. He's tweeted out things that people have assumed to be racist. He's tweeted out links to things that have been shown later to be from organizations that were particularly spurious. Now, there seems to be no control over what Donald Trump does or does not tweet out, and that could be down to simply the inexperience and the youth of his communications team. We're likely to see advisors go to him and say, look, you really need to be more careful when it comes to social media. In light of the Orlando shootings a week ago, of course, we saw a very measured response, a very measured public response from Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side, in sharp contrast to Donald Trump, who does tend to shoot from the hip when it comes to this sort of thing. And Twitter and other social media avenues really give him a way to do that. For the Trump campaign, it has resulted in a lot of free publicity. He's been allowed to get away with a lot of things that many candidates have not been able to get away with. He's been able to get away with spending very little money overall because of the free publicity he gets for his statements. Now, you would expect that somebody who's coming into the campaign from the outside would maybe advise against these kinds of tweets, because they really do bring a lot of unwanted attention to the Trump campaign, and that's certainly something that they're trying to reduce.
Steve, thank you so much for joining us. We have to leave it there for now. That was our U.S. correspondent, Steve Mort, on the latest developments in the U.S. election campaign.